everybody. Welcome back to Open Stutter. My name is Maria, and I'm here joined by Aliza. And we are so excited to talk to you today, Aliza, a little bit about your journey. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm Aliza. I'm a speech pathologist. I live in New York City. I've been here for about 5 years now, and I've stuttered since I was 6.
Okay. So, and do you remember when you first started stuttering at age 6? Because it's a little bit later than some people start stuttering.
I remember my first memory of stuttering. I was on the playground in first grade and was stuttering, and someone asked me, "Why do you talk like that?" And I just remember saying, "Because it's fun." And I actually wrote about that response in almost all my college essays and my grad school essay, just because it stuck with me over the years that my first response to stuttering was a lie because I didn't know what else to say about it.
Oh, interesting.
But apparently I did stutter pretty badly when I first stuttered with like secondary behaviors, and I don't really remember that. But I've been covert for as long as I can remember.
And for those who might not know what that word means, what does it mean to be a covert person who stutters? And how did that journey kind of unfold for you from maybe starting out openly stuttering to the point where a kid asked you about it to sort of becoming more covert?
Yeah, so covert is basically the ability to hide your stutter with tricks or other ways. If you're overt, it's more obvious that you stutter. And if you're covert, you're just very aware of what you're about to say. You're always thinking ahead of what is coming up. If it's going to be a word that you know you will stutter on, you switch it, or you use or like or other tricks to get out of stuttering at all. So you kind of come across as a fluent speaker to some people, even though you're exhausted from always trying to hide it, but no one really knows.
Right. So you can use a lot of these what we call sometimes tricks to sort of pass as a fluent speaker, maybe, but it's a lot of work and a lot of planning out the sentence in a million different ways.
Or you might not even speak at all in school, or you'll just avoid a lot of speaking situations.
Right. So it sounds like you were covert for a lot of your childhood and teen years, or do you feel like you became covert later?
I think I became covert like right away, just
Mhm.
being teased about my stutter. And I like remember getting speech therapy in school during lunch in like 4th grade. And maybe that's the year that I probably started being, I'm not sure, but I just remember I never really answered questions in class. I never read out loud if we had to. I would count how many people till it was my turn. And if I knew I wouldn't be able to say whatever it was because of a specific word, I would go to the bathroom, or I lived in the nurse's office, basically.
Mhm.
She knew my parents' phone numbers by heart. Um, but I never spoke in class ever.
Right. Yeah. So, and you mentioned speech therapy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the first therapy I had was pretty awful.
Mhm.
Um, it was something that's not used anymore. I think I've tried to Google it and it just doesn't exist because I don't think it's ethical. But I basically was told I didn't breathe properly, and I was hooked up to this machine on this TV, and it was basically a game of this person going down a like skiing down a hill or snowboarding down a hill. But in order to get them down the hill, you had to take a really big breath and breathe out. And if you stopped breathing out, he died. And like the game was
Mm.
over and you had to start over. It's pretty awful. I wasn't there for so long. And then I went to a different therapist, but I did a lot of stuttering modification and like fluency shaping, like easy onset. And I was with that therapist basically until high school, um, on and off here and there.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. So,
Which is
so it's,
better.
yeah, yeah, definitely better than that first therapy. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah.
And, we know that breathing isn't really the issue with stuttering. So
Right.
probably wasn't super helpful. And then maybe some therapy that was a little bit more trying to modify the moment of stuttering or even avoid the moment of stuttering.
Hmm.
Okay, sounds
I
good.
I definitely talked more about my feelings with the second therapist, just
Mm.
how I think I cried a lot with that therapist. Um, just talking about how embarrassed and like how much shame I felt, I guess.
Right.
But she was definitely a lot better than the first person.
Totally. I think that is something that's so underestimated when people are covert is people in their lives or listeners might go, well, I never really hear them stutter, so there can't be much life impact. Like it seems like they're doing great, they're managing it, whatever they might be thinking. And
Hmm.
a lot of times that's really not the case.
Yeah, definitely not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what made you interested in changing this viewpoint of trying to maybe modify that stutter or maybe make it smaller or avoid the stutter altogether. What made you more interested in becoming somebody who might stutter openly?
I think grad school was a big part of that. I went to grad school for speech therapy, obviously, and I have always wanted to work with people who stutter. Just the like therapy aspect of it. I just that's just what I want to do with my life. And so I think what I kind of was like playing around with being a little more overt with some of my friends. I ended up like telling most of my friends like in college that I stutter at some point, but that was also a big deal for people who are covert, just disclosing to people that you stutter. But as one of my externships in grad school, I worked at the American Institute of Stuttering, and I helped lead one of their immersion programs in the winter for other people who stutter. And as part of that program, you go into the community and you interview people on the street about what they know about stuttering, or you just go on the subway, you tell the whole subway cart that you stutter, and it just, I think I cried more than I've ever cried like that whole year in that 7 days. And it
Right.
just made me wish that was my life always. Um,
Wow.
it was such a safe space, and I didn't have any like shame in those moments because I was the, I guess they're not really experiments, but those things we did in that week, because I was leading it, some of the people in the program wanted to see someone else do it first. Like if they see someone else stutter at Bed Bath and Beyond, they would be more comfortable doing it too. So because I was doing it for someone else, it just felt easier, and I just
Mm.
wanted to change my life after that. It hasn't been so easy, but I think that's what started it.
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds so empowering to have that many people looking up to you and is a liberating experience for you at the same time. That is so cool.
Mhm. It was a little bit hard, that program, because I was technically this mentor for people who stutter, but I was still on my stuttering journey. So I was kind of like struggling with being in this like role model role as a role model of a person who stutters, and I was covert. So it was like a hard, I don't know what the right word is, but um, like I had opposing, um, like I felt like a fraud almost.
Yeah, almost that discrepancy or that incongruence of like,
Yeah.
I'm presenting this way, but maybe internally that's not how I feel.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Right.
Yeah.
But it did feel like this is who I want to be and this is how I want to communicate.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I ended up posting the video of me on the subway cart telling the whole subway cart that I stuttered. If you told me like a year before that actually happened that I would do that, I would think you were joking. But
Yeah.
on like National Stuttering Awareness Day, I posted it to my Facebook. Um, and I got a lot of views, actually, like almost 2,000.
Wow.
And that was like a big step in my like overt journey, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, that's incredible. And I love that idea of like a year ago, I didn't think I could do this, but as with the catchphrase you've taught me, we can do hard things.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. You can definitely do hard things.
Speaking of being in that mentor role in a few other ways, talk to me a little bit about what it's like being a speech therapist and a person who stutters, and what that relationship is like, if you feel like there is any vulnerability there, or if it doesn't really seem related to you, even though I know that's why you went into the field, but does it feel like
Right.
there's still a relationship there?
I think that there definitely is some sort of emotion towards it, but it's not such a like big deal to me that I'm a speech therapist and I stutter. There's sometimes where I feel like it's a blessing, like it almost helps me because I know what it's like to be in the patient's like seat or client seat, because I've been
Right.
there, like I had therapy. But some other times where I'm like talking with the parents, there's some sort of fear that the parent is gonna, like, if I show my stutter at an IEP meeting, they might wish their child had a different therapist who was able to speak normally.
Mm,
But at the same time, um, it doesn't impact my everyday life so much. But I
right.
know it can for other people be a bit of a challenge to overcome. But um, yeah, I don't know. I think it is, I like go back and forth between the two of them sometimes.
Right. And it sounds like that vulnerability that you described is something that people who are covert face everywhere, every day,
Mhm.
right? Like that decision, should I be vulnerable and show this? And then risk, I'm not sure what this person's going to think of it. They might have stereotypes about stuttering and think, I can't be a speech therapist if I stutter, which is crazy. But
Right,
you never know what might be going on in their head. And so it's really vulnerable to put yourself out there.
right. Plus, like at a certain point, I'm not sure if this is the case with everyone who's covert, but at a certain point, the tricks you use don't always work.
Mm,
And random stutters here and there will come out without you knowing. So it's even scarier if that happens like with a person who you haven't told yet and they're just like, what's going on? uh,
right.
so
Yeah, it feels like you get ambushed and you weren't planning on showing it there, maybe purposefully.
yeah.
And that can feel a little bit scarier than when you're planning to show it to somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. I see that a lot with tricks kind of not working, especially in high feared environments, which is like where people want them to work the most, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I say that my stuttering and being a speech therapist aren't isn't something I think about, but maybe it is because work is one of my highest feared places to stutter.
Hmm. Oh,
Um,
interesting.
just there's certain people at work that are harder for me to stutter in front of.
Hmm.
Others that are a lot easier. Um, but or certain teachers that are more fearful, but so maybe it does impact me more than I think I do, but um, yeah,
And it's hard to tease out sometimes, right? Like I might feel higher feared in this situation, but I'm not sure exactly why or exactly what I'm afraid is going to be the result. I just know that I
yeah,
feel some fear or some discomfort.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah. So the topic we're talking about today is vulnerability, and I can't think of a more perfect person to talk to about it because I do think you're so vulnerable about your journey every step of the way. So tell me a little bit about how you think vulnerability and stuttering go together.
I think it always goes together, just especially when you're covert, being
Mm.
vulnerable and telling someone that you stutter because you trust them is a really big deal. And um, is actually like something I always think about. Like if I'm going on dates or meeting someone for the first time, I'm thinking about, well, when am I going to tell them this big part of me?
Right.
And then a totally like separate part of it is showing that person that you stutter and like almost proving to them, not proving, but I guess as a covert stutterer, I sometimes feel like I need to prove to someone that I stutter. Like if
Mm.
I tell them that I stutter, there's a lot of, most of them say, oh, I actually never noticed. You're so fluent. And which they might think is a compliment, but to me, trying to be overt, it's like, well, not a compliment because it's just showing that I'm not as overt as I want to be, but
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
just a stutter itself is really vulnerable just because it depends how you feel about it on in yourself. Like all the shame and embarrassment and judgment just makes it scarier to let people know or show them.
Right. Totally. And just because you've started on this journey of acceptance doesn't mean you're not still working against 2.5 decades of kind of this shame and wanting to hide it and not liking the sound of it necessarily.
Yeah, and not, it's like my least favorite part about me
Mm.
sometimes. um, I definitely know it's made me who I am, and I wouldn't be as empathetic or understanding or as good of a listener without my stutter. But at the same time, if I could take a pill to get rid of it, some days I would say yes.
Right.
Um, but it just, yeah, it's frustrating.
Right. I think that's why you're the perfect kind of model of this vulnerability. Like you're not lying and saying, yeah, I have stutter pride already. Like I'm there, I've
Yeah,
mastered it. It's like, this is still a part of me that I
yeah,
haven't learned to embrace. And that's okay.
yeah. Sorry.
Do not apologize. Please take your time.
Yeah, it's just like a constant struggle just to like accept this part of me. It's like my like least favorite part. It's just really it's just really frustrating because the way that the world shows people who stutter in movies or comic strips or just anything, it's just so stigmatized as like you're unintelligent or you don't know what you're talking about or you're less capable than other people. So
Right.
it's just frustrating trying to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah. And feeling like you have to carry that flag almost, or it's kind of like this battle that you've had to fight privately for so long being covert. And that's a lot to carry. And it's a lot to carry to feel like I have to be representative of stuttering to be something more,
Right.
which is unfair too. It's just a lot on your shoulders.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And like my name is my hardest thing for me to say.
Mm.
So it just has a daily impact on me because you can't avoid saying your name ever. It's who you are.
Right. Although I know plenty of people who do avoid it. And I will say, I gave you an out to avoid it at the beginning of this interview. I said Aliza like 7 times. I was like, I'm here
I
with
know.
Aliza. Here we go, Aliza. Take it away, Aliza. And then you said your name anyway, and you stuck with it. And I was really impressed. So
Yeah,
I
thanks.
think it's things like that, like taking that courageous step and speaking when you don't have to, saying the feared word when it's your choice and when you're not forced to. I think those are the actions that kind of help you learn to accept that part of yourself and
Yeah.
start to see it from another angle. I feel like it's all about actions. It's all about what you're doing every day, because you're right. It's a hard journey, and you're not going to wake up and be like, okay, today's the day I'm going to accept this part of me, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's also hard because if I there's some there's a lot of times where I show my stutter to certain people and I don't get the best reactions. There'll be like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening right now? And then it's almost like you're forced to disclose that you
Right,
stutter, which I might have done anyways. But
right.
now it's like you're in this tough spot of, well, all these people are now staring at you. Why are you not responding to them? And now you have to like verbalize this thing about what's going on.
Right. And now it's not my choice to disclose. Now I feel like I have to.
Yeah, it's kind of like taken away from me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of vulnerability just in that of knowing I'm not going to be able to control reactions. People might say what's going on, or people might give me a look or make a face or whatever it might be, which we're going to have plenty of advice, I'm sure, for fluent allies. But we can't control what's going to happen the first time you stutter in front of somebody when they don't know that you stutter yet.
Yeah.
And I think that can be one of the most vulnerable moments, is kind of preparing for that instead of hoping for a good outcome.
Right.
Right? Like that's something we talk about a lot in avoidance reduction therapies, the idea of like, I'm not going to go in hoping that they smile and nod and they're super nice about the stutter. I'm going to go in prepared, knowing that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
And I think that can be one of the hardest mental shifts. I don't know about you.
No, I think it's definitely the hardest. Just even as a person who doesn't stutter, we care about what people think, and just learning that you can't control what someone thinks about you is really hard,
Yeah.
um, especially if you stutter. It's harder because you just, even like, I don't make eye contact a lot when I'm talking to people, especially if I'm stuttering, because I don't want to see the reaction on their face. So it's almost like if I don't look at it, it's not happening.
Yeah.
But even though it
Right.
literally is. But
Right. Because that moment, it is kind of also like, I keep using the word, but vulnerable and intimate, of like, we're making eye contact. I'm seeing
yeah,
what you're seeing what I'm going through. That can be really hard at first too, especially when you're not prepared for it.
right. And it's almost like they react based on how you're reacting. Like, I know that avoiding eye contact is making it probably more uncomfortable for them, just because they see that I'm not comfortable.
Okay.
So it's just a constant battle, and it's really like multifaceted, and just people don't realize how like emotional it is. Even if I'm not stuttering all the time, it's always there.
People really don't realize how much is below that iceberg, as we put it. Like you can
Yeah.
talk about it all the day, but when you describe it, I think it really is I think this is gonna be a big light bulb moment for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people who stutter are out there like, finally, somebody's putting this into words really well, you know?
Yeah.
So that idea of, I think at the beginning of the journey, especially, you're not going to seem confident, right? Like you can't really fake it and say, let me go in and stutter and I'm going to act really proud of it and act like I'm thrilled and everyone's going to love it and cheer.
Yeah.
You know, especially at the beginning of the journey when it can be most scary, it is kind of that feeling of like, the first time I open stutter in front of someone new, I'm probably going to be really scared and I might seem really scared and they might assume things about what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I let myself be vulnerable enough to like not only show it, but also show it non-confidently?
Yeah. It's always really hard. And you want to seem like you're this confident person, but you just truly aren't. Um, it's just, there's some people I meet who stutter. There's someone at my work actually who stutters so well and is so cool. And I always want to tell her that she inspires me, but she so doesn't like have, or it looks to me as if she has no like uh emotions about her stutter. She just makes eye contact, just like lets it happen, and it's really cool. And that's like my dream, to be like, but
Right.
it just takes a long time and a lot of hard work too. Just letting yourself feel the shame and embarrassment and just being okay with that.
Right. But I agree with you. I think that's probably your long-term goal, right? Is like, I'm just letting this stutter happen. I'm making eye contact. Everyone moves on and survives and lives their life happily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is not the case right now at
Yeah.
all.
But you'll get there, honestly. Like, I already am so impressed by the stutters we've heard today. It's been really cool to see that you've been that vulnerable with us right now. So I think that in and of itself is like something to be really proud of.
Thanks. There's probably going to be people I know who watch this that are like, I've never seen you stutter before. But
This is going to be a great surprise for everybody. I can't wait.
yeah.
Um, so tell me a little bit about what's been maybe one of the more rewarding parts of this journey, because we have talked about how hard it is and how it takes all this vulnerability of like putting yourself out there for anyone to attack. What
Yeah.
have been some of the rewarding parts that keep you going?
I think just the like support from my family always, and the few friends that I really talk to about it. One of my closest friends also stutters, which is really nice. And um, just the few moments I get that are like positive reactions, even though there's way more negative, just keep me going, which is um, interesting if you think about that. There's so many more negative reactions, but I guess I'm just so tired of being tired all the time. Um,
Mm.
and I think it just motivates me that we can do hard things. And I don't know how, if Glennon Doyle will ever know how often I quote her, but um, just reminding myself that it's not who I am. It's like it matters what I'm saying, not how I'm saying it. People are going to listen to what I have to say rather than focusing on if it takes me forever to get it out, which I say more often than I believe, so
Mm.
that it might become true. But I think, yeah, if it wasn't for the few people who like support me and I tell them that I'm on this journey of arts therapy and that they'll see me stutter more, I don't know if I could do it. And like, you're the most helpful person ever, too.
Thank you. Well, and I think the fact that you have been so open with people in your life and kind of setting up that baseline for you is like going to be so huge. And then the fact that you have that strength of like, I'm exhausted from communicating or trying to communicate or holding back from communicating. I'm so tired, but I keep going. All that strength is just going to be rerouted into this new effort.
Yeah,
Like, I think you're recognizing that, like, this is taking way too much strength and effort and it's too hard. Let me try doing hard a different way, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. And it's definitely not an easy journey, and I cry about it all the time, and it's just frustrating, and I'm gonna cry again, but I'm just tired of being of like hiding who I am and not asking the questions I want to ask or answering the questions I want to answer. Or like so many people, the way I stutter, I use a lot, or I just make it seem like I'm thinking of what I want to say when I know exactly what it is. I just know I can't say it. So just showing that I am smart and I'm not this, like, I don't know what the word is, but just like lying all the time. It's like lying to myself, like, or I don't know. I don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense, but
It does. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot to say. Like, you have an important voice, you have an amazing personality, you have all of this to contribute. And you're trying to tell yourself you don't necessarily have to contribute, you don't have to speak. and you're tired of hiding that part of yourself because
Yeah.
you've got something to say and you have a voice.
Yeah. And like there's with the tricks, like you as people who are covert switch the words around to other synonyms that may not make any sense, but
Mm,
you say them anyways because you can say them fluently. And I just don't want to do that anymore.
right.
Um, and like don't want to sound like a weirdo sometimes, like saying something that I guess could make sense, but shows some like people pause, like that was a weird way to say that.
Mm,
But
right. Well, in the meantime, I'm all about sounding like a weirdo, clearly. And you have proven the point that I live in a very cry friendly house. I think crying is very important. And we talk about that all the time, right? Like it's so important to just like be vulnerable with what you're feeling and let it out and like show it to people. So
yeah,
people who are watching can understand stuttering is not like an articulation disorder. It's not like any other part of
exactly,
speech therapy. It's very different and it's tied to kind of years of identity.
exactly. Yeah, it's not like no one knows that, I feel like, which is
Right.
really frustrating.
So I'm curious, first of all, for those of us who want to be fluent allies, do you have any advice, or just for listeners who might meet somebody who stutters and want to be a good listener, what are kind of some do's and don'ts for them, for us?
I would definitely say don't like lose your eye contact with them. Don't finish what they're saying if you hear them stuttering on a word or pausing, but you know what the word they want to say is, like to fill in the blank. Don't do that because it'll make them stutter more, most likely. And it just, I hate when people do that. But at the same time, if you're my close friend and you know that I stutter, I sometimes want you to do it because I'm just so tired.
Mm,
Um, but also, like, don't avoid the topic. Like, don't be scared to ask questions about stuttering and pretend like it's not happening because it is. We're all seeing it.
right,
And it's okay to talk about. Um,
right.
I think the biggest thing though is just don't finish our sentences. Just give us the time and space we need to get it out. It might take a minute, which might feel awkward, but it's just the time that we need.
Right. I think that's really great advice. And I really love the advice of not necessarily finishing off a sentence. And maybe for friends, broaching that topic and saying, hey, I know you stutter. Maybe you've told me about it, maybe not, whatever, but how can I be a good ally? What do you want me to do in certain situations? Like, how can I support basically? Because that's probably how your friends know whether you're tired and you want them to help out or whether you're like, no, this is my battle. I'm ready for this.
Yeah. And I definitely like feel comfortable with certain friends telling them that like if I'm going somewhere and I'm having a hard day with my stutter, if they could introduce me like to other people, like that would help me. Or
Mhm.
if it's a like different type of day, like I don't need their help, then don't do that. But I think the best reactions I've had are in a moment of stuttering or afterwards of a person or the listener will say, hey, like if that's happening, like, do you want me to finish your word? You want me to wait it out with you? Like, what do you need? And that's been the best, just letting me tell you what I need.
I think so many listeners that I've talked to think that that's going to be rude, right? They're like, oh, I shouldn't talk about it because they didn't bring it up. I don't want them to think I noticed the stutter. I don't want it to seem like I'm bringing up something taboo. And it's like, no, let's make it not taboo. Let's just talk about it openly.
Right. Like it's literally happening right in front of us. So,
Right.
yeah.
Definitely. And then any advice for either parents of kids who are stuttering or speech therapists who might be working with kids who are stuttering?
I think it's so important to um, not reward fluent speech,
Mm,
um, not use words like Oh, you said that so fluently without stutters, or um, there's with like little kids who stutter, there's always the smooth versus bumpy speech, and I just think it's um, a lot of parents bring children to speech therapy because they want to get rid of their stutter, but that's not going to happen. It's like once you stutter, you always stutter. You might have like brief periods of time where you're really fluent because you're less anxious about certain things, or that's just what's happening. But
Right.
I just think, like, talk about it, let it be something that's spoken about in the house. Don't avoid it, because everyone knows it's happening, and it's okay. Like if a really big stutter happens, praise that, be like, that looked really hard, but you still did it anyways. That's awesome.
Right. Praising the courage instead of praising the fluency. Because when you say, hey, nice smooth speech, the kid's probably like, well, I didn't do anything to get that. And next time
Right.
I might not be able to do that. So what do you want me to do here?
Yeah.
Right.
And just kind of like, I was very lucky that I had parents that, like, I was reading my like stuttering eval when I was home during quarantine, and my self-awareness was like above average as a 6-year-old, on whatever test they gave me of like my quality of life, whatever. But um like the kid is aware of what words or sounds are hard for them to say,
Mhm.
and just giving them the space to talk about it, be upset about it, but also like explain to them what stuttering is, because
Right.
I didn't know what it was. So when someone asked me, why do you talk like that? I didn't have the words to tell them.
Right.
Um, and I didn't know like how to do that really. So I lied and said, because it's fun, which is not, it's not the case, but
Worst comeback at that age though.
right.
Right. But it's maybe not what you intended to say.
Yeah. And
Um,
I almost wish I like stood up in front of my class and taught them what stuttering was.
right.
Um, but
Interesting.
just give them, explain what stuttering is
Mhm.
so they can tell other people about it too.
Right. And start that acceptance journey young. Because like
Yeah,
you said, I mean, there is that age where they might spontaneously recover if they're young or if stuttering onset is kind of recent. But after a certain point, we have to start working on advocacy and talking about it and knowing what to call it and teaching our friends about it.
right. But also there's some kids who don't need any therapy because they just accept their stutter.
Mhm.
So if you bring them to therapy, it might like stunt their growth a little bit. So I
Mm.
think it's important to see how it's impacting the child. Like, is the teacher saying they're avoiding speaking in class, or are they still doing all the things they would do and they're stuttering? Then like they don't need therapy. But
Right.
um,
I mean, especially if your goals are confidence and comfort and efficient speech, you may not need therapy.
right.
Maybe if your goals are fluency, then that's a different story. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. The biggest thing is just to let the person speak. Don't finish what they're saying, and give them the space to talk.
Right. Yeah. And teach them that they can do hard things.
Exactly.
And I bought the Glennon Doyle book, by the way. So
Did
you're
you?
you're spreading the good news. And now I'm on board and I'm gonna follow her and be her disciple. So
Yeah, she's great.
well, thank you so much for talking with us, Aliza. Sorry, this was so inspiring. And I really think that this is going to be such a light bulb moment for people watching or who really just feel connected and feel like you're speaking for them right now because you shared a lot of stuff that can be really tough to talk about. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all of this with us.
Yeah, I am happy to be here. Thank you so much.